since Bowns is a local supervisor
Since Busby Bowns.
Since Busby Bowns for the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. Midge Marlot is a foster care specialist representative, and we're going to talk for the most part about foster care. You know, sometimes, Midge, if I dare, it's really much maligned. And sometimes there are people who come from these situations for a goodly part of their youth and have absolutely no quarrel with it because some good people have stepped up to the plate and given some love and attention to kids who need that. Let's talk about foster care and the ups and downs and ins and outs, and how these people are screened and brought into the system as foster care parents. And since I don't mean to ignore you, you just jump in there whenever you want, okay?
Okay, Ma. All right. Good morning, listeners. This is Midge Marlot. And unlike Judy, I don't have a GPS, so it took me about an hour and a half to drive from Brimfield this morning, so you can see my level of dedication in order to be here today.
And it's appreciated. I just want to make that abundantly clear.
I'm real excited to be out here, and thank God for Cince, because I would not know how to get out of here again. So thank you. As Judy said, I'm a foster care licensing representative, and I've been with the department for 21 years. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up in foster care, so even having worked at DCFS for 21 years, I do know the need for good foster parents. And I don't mean perfect foster parents. You don't have to live in a mansion, and you can live in an apartment, a townhouse, you know, what have you, as long as it's a safe dwelling and you have a heart for children. And we do screen foster parents, but that's a process. What I'm here today is to answer some general questions, tell you who to call if you're interested, and I have to warn you that if I don't get at least 2 calls for people being interested, now that doesn't mean that you're signing up for anything or I'm going to get in your personal business the first time you call me, just interested in learning more about foster care, and if I don't get those 2 calls from this area, I'm going to keep coming back, and you're just going to have to hear from me again and again and again. So somebody's going to have to make that call, even if it was Jim over here. He may be calling just to have me not come back again. I don't know.
The number is 648-5510, and I want you to go ahead, but I want to come back to you. Our son Gregory, who's just a major in the Department of Corrections, has been involved in that, and I want to talk about that, but go right ahead, please, Midge.
Okay. A little bit about the process is that you just have to inquire. You just call up, and we'll direct you to the person that you need to talk to. Now, when I got this area that's covered by this radio station, I was surprised that that rickety old tower up there, no offense, but I was surprised that it reaches this many listeners. So I'll let you know that I work in the Sangamon County area, Christian County, and I work for Mason and Menard counties, and of course Logan County. But I see that you go all the way up to Pekin and Morton, so I'm going to give you a phone number because you would have your questions answered by somebody from the Peoria DCFS field office at 309-671-7900. That's the Peoria field office. Now, if you don't have your pen and paper handy, just take a second to go get it, because I'm going to give some phone numbers, and we just want you to call and ask. So, and if you do call me, I do travel quite a bit, but as soon as I get your message, I will get back with you. So don't think if you don't hear from me that day that I'm not calling you back, because I do travel quite a bit, and I will get back with you. So I wanted you to know that. The process begins with your phone call, like I said. Some people, as surveys have shown, have thought about foster care or maybe discussed it with their spouse or significant other for about a year before they pick up the phone. And I'm asking you in this particular area, and I'm in Logan County right now, as you probably know, don't wait that year. Call. Get your questions answered. There are no stupid questions. There's, you don't have to tell me all of your personal business the first time you talk to me, but just call and I'll answer whatever your questions are. Now, our children come into care, we call it care, foster care or placement, because of abuse or neglect. And those things have to be proven in court, or they have to be proven by the department's investigators. So we don't just open a phone book and decide to take somebody's children. These children have experienced a level of trauma.
Well, and isn't this authenticated by the court system and so forth? This isn't something that a neighbor can just call and say, my neighbor next door is abusing and neglecting her kids. There's a lot more to it than
there really
that.
is. But, in simple terms, if you do make a hotline call, it does have to reach a certain level of criteria that's set forth by certain Child Care Acts and the Act creating the department, the Adoption Act. It is set by law, is what I'm trying to say, and the Juvenile Court Act. So the children that do go into placement, where it's determined that there's absolutely no way that we can keep these children in their homes, will have to go to juvenile court, and the judge, state's attorney, everybody has to agree that these children need to stay in placement or in foster care.
And you make court appearances like Cinth does in her part of your profession. You do not.
No, sir.
In your case, you do not.
I simply, Cinth has that end of it. Now, I've worked in those ends. I've done just about everything at DCFS in 21 years. However, at this time, I simply license foster parents.
I see.
Okay, and my part of that, the reason Cinth and I work together, is we try to match the foster parent to the child and vice versa, so that there's a good match between them when we place them.
Well, and foster parents can choose, depending on how many bedrooms they have, that they can only take girls in, because they have 2 daughters, and so we don't have the space for a boy, or vice versa. They can also choose, I really only want to do teenagers, or I really only want to do grade school children. And they can pick and choose, and that helps us match, instead of saying, well, we'll take anything, whether it be male or female, infant up to 18 years old.
I can attest to the investigations, and at the foster care investigations prior to placing the youngsters in a home, or anything like adoption investigations, they're stringent. I think about 75% of the people out there in the Congress couldn't pass the investigations that we had to pass.
Maybe not.
When I'm not too facetious about that. Seriously, when we adopted our 2 boys at different times, we underwent very stringent investigation. I thought I'd taken Paul Baker to live with us for about 2 months. And I don't mean that lightly. I think that's very good. That's,
yes.
It's just the way it should be done. So,
That's right. I'm glad to hear that you're an adoptive parent. We don't want to put our most vulnerable citizens, our traumatized youth, in just any home. We do an extensive background. Now, that's not to say that if you did something when you were 20 years old and you're 35 now and, you paid the price and it wasn't a serious felony. People do make mistakes when they're young. And a lot of times the people that make mistakes when they're young and get the help they need and get through it make very good foster parents, because they can relate to the children and the court systems and things of that nature. So, if you did do something stupid when you were younger and, you're successful now, you're raising your own kids, or you have raised kids, or you would like to raise kids, and it's been more than 10 years and it's not a serious felony, we can work with that. So I don't want people frightened to death that they did something that they regret when they were 20, but now, that's way in the past for them not to call.
It's just human nature to share the bad luck stories about any program, anything that we can think of. But there was a couple here in Lincoln, stall huts, that everyone knew them. And I think they took in up to 6 troubled teen girls at a time. And they'd get a call at 2 in the morning that this kid needed a home. And they did it for years. And now we're talking troubled teens. The fact that the stall huts did this for years and years and years, I think, is testimony to the fact that it can well work out. Just because you say troubled teen, don't mark this kid. There are many things that can take place in your home that would make this kid's life a success.
Absolutely, and those people absolutely have their wings. They are angels. It is a little more difficult to find homes that take just the teenagers. And you can well imagine that a teenager that hasn't gone back home to their family or hasn't been adopted by former foster parents that they may have been with, they have very special needs. And, you have some very good foster parents that know how to pick their battles, have a good sense of humor, and just can relate very well to teenagers. And those kids will thrive in that environment. They definitely need homes. And there are people that adopt teenagers. And a lot of people say, oh, teenagers, that's too old. But the fact of the matter is you can adopt anyone at any age. I could adopt a 25-year-old if I wished. And the point being that these kids are going to live till their 80s, and they need a home. They need someone they can bring their children to and go to for holidays. So
yes.
It's not that they're too old. You have to look at what's going to go on in the future.
Well, and this is why matching is so important, because you're looking for a forever home. And if you're dealing with a teenager, starting at the age of 12, they have to consent to an adoption. And there are a lot of children that say, I don't want to be adopted, but I want to stay here. And it does become their forever home. They go away to college, they come home, for Christmas. They bring the grandchildren over. You become their family. And they may still have contact with their biological family.
We experienced adoption from our son who was adopted. They were foster parents of 3 siblings. And time and a half went by, and they decided that this is what they wanted to do. So instead of foster parents, they became adoptive parents, and it's worked out very well. The systems can also make mistakes, Midge.
It's a big system. It's a big one.
Prior to this experience, when they were in Southern Illinois, and Greg was down there in his capacity at TAMS, they were foster parents of 2 siblings, a boy and a girl, and they had high hopes of adopting them. And the process, in its infinite wisdom, decided they should go back to their parents, and it turned out that didn't work out very well. And it was kind of a tearjerker at the time, and particularly in view of the fact that it didn't work out very well with the kids going back to their parents, they found out later. But there are a lot of great things that can happen from foster parent experiences.
Yep, exactly. And I don't want to get into where children go back home and it doesn't work. I mean, that does happen. Sure. We make a contract, basically, the courts and the department, with the birth parents. If they do this, this, and this, they will get their children back. Now, sometimes that doesn't work out, as in your son's situation. And we also have foster parents that, unfortunately face infertility issues. We get a lot of younger foster parents. And so they do come to the department to foster with the hope to adopt. Of course, you have to bear in mind that our first priority is to reunite the families. But I will say, in my 21 years of experience with the department, that about half of those children will not be successfully reunited with their parents for whatever reason. So, or they may go home briefly and come right back into the system. And those foster parents do have first preference to adopt. So if you're willing to open your heart and home like your son did, and maybe you will suffer a loss when these kids go back home the first time, maybe the second time, or maybe not. Maybe the first time around those children will be adopted by you. But that is the first preference. So you do have to know that going in, that it's not just the children, but it is the families that we also work with.